discuss their budget requests in greater detail today, so I'll only note that each component has requested an increase above the FY 2026 enacted levels. We've had several years of relatively flat budgets, and in the case of ATF, significant reductions. These agencies need additional resources to carry out their responsibilities effectively. I've seen firsthand the important work these agencies are doing in my home state, whether it's ATF expanding crime gun intelligence through its partnership at Wichita State University, DEA's effort to combat fentanyl trafficking and support law enforcement in rural communities across Kansas, the FBI's coordination with state and local partners as Kansas City prepares to host soccer matches during the FIFA 2026 World Cup, or the Marshals working alongside local law enforcement through fugitive task forces across the District of Kansas. Today's hearing is an opportunity for this committee to better understand the challenges facing each of your agencies, the resources you believe are necessary to carry out your missions, and how Congress can best support the men and women serving in the federal law enforcement. I appreciate each of you being here today, and I look forward to your testimony. Senator Van Hollen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to working with you again to write a bill that provides the resources the FBI, DEA, ATF, and the U.S. Marshals Service need to protect their core missions, ensuring the safety, security, and rights of the American people. I also look forward to continuing to work with you to ensure oversight and accountability regarding the new FBI headquarters and making sure that it meets the mission and security requirements of the FBI. And I welcome all the witnesses today as we recognize key members of our American law enforcement family during National Police Week. I look forward to hearing about the various budget requests, but we should acknowledge that we are not gathered here at this hearing at a normal time, because what we are learning about what's happening at the FBI is anything but normal. Director Patel, as you ask for more taxpayer resources, we cannot look away from the credible, extremely troubling reports about your misconduct at the FBI. All four of you hold positions of great public trust. The American people trust that each of you will responsibly exercise your powers to protect them. You're expected to be on call night and day, able to make quick decisions to guard our nation's security. You must always be prepared to answer that call, whether it comes at 3 p.m. or 3 a.m. That is your duty. Director Patel, I don't care one bit about your private life, and I don't give a damn about what you do on your own time and your own dime, unless and until it interferes with your public responsibilities. Being the director of the FBI is an awesome responsibility. And when your private actions make it impossible for you to perform your public duties, we have a big problem. You cannot perform those public duties if you're incapacitated. And Director Patel, these reports about your conduct, including reports of your being so drunk and hungover that your staff had to force entry into your home, are extremely alarming. If true, they demonstrate a gross dereliction of your duty and a betrayal of public trust. I cannot imagine ever having to worry about former FBI directors Wray or Mueller spending multiple weekends drinking heavily at the Poodle Room in Las Vegas. Now, I understand that you've denied these reports, and you will have a chance today here to challenge them. But the problem with your leadership does not end there. We're also witnessing a litany of other abuses. Political firings of trusted career agents whose only fault was following the facts and the law. That includes the firing of agents and staff from a special counterintelligence unit that monitored threats from Iran. Weaponizing the FBI to seek political revenge on former FBI Director James Comey and others. Using FBI investigative resources to go after journalists who write stories that you don't like. And just this morning, we learned more details about your firing of Brian Driscoll, a decorated FBI special agent with nearly 2 decades of experience. He claims in an interview that you made clear that his failure at the FBI was tied to, that his future at the FBI was tied to his political allegiance to Donald Trump. So you're asking for more resources at a time that you're misspending valuable resources on political revenge instead of focusing on defending our national security. I'm pleased, as the chairman said, that all of your agencies noticed our bipartisan opposition to the deep cuts from last year and have presented more robust plans this year. There's still major gaps to be addressed. One notable example among the DOJ programs is the elimination of the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Forces. As I understand it, DEA was oddly sidelined in this process. I'm also concerned about diverting resources away from core missions of each of your agencies to fuel President Trump's mass deportation agenda. Trump told us he was going after the, quote, worst of the worst who posed a danger to our communities. That would be fine. But if you look at the Department of Homeland Security's own data, overwhelmingly the people being targeted and locked up pose no risk to public safety. So when you divert resources away from fighting serious violent crime to locking people up who mostly don't pose a risk to public safety, you're making us less, not more safe. Let me close by thanking the thousands of law enforcement personnel, both local, state, and federal, who work tirelessly each day to keep us all safe. And I look forward to the hearing and discussion today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Ranking Member. I look forward to working with you as we work our way through these budget requests and our appropriations process. I now recognize our witnesses for their testimony, and I recognize the Director of the FBI, Kash Patel.
Good afternoon, Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Van Hollen, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for inviting me to represent the FBI's fiscal year 2027. It's an honor to represent the 36,000 men and women of the FBI that serve around the country and around the world, especially during Police Week.
Director, would you pull the mic closer, please?
Of course.
Thank you.
This week, especially for Police Week, we pause to commemorate the incredible dedication and bravery of our law enforcement communities across the country, who stand on the front lines and shield our citizens from dangers and threaten our everyday way of life. Every day, the FBI safeguards our nation's safety and security with our law enforcement partners. To achieve our no-fail mission, we fully support the President's budget proposal for the FBI for $12.53 billion to get us right-sized. Before getting into specifics, I'd like to highlight that the importance of the FBI mission is never more important than at this critical time, especially during the recent violent attacks during the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which all too many of us were there. I was proud that the FBI within moments immediately jumped into action, launched a bi-coastal investigation, launched fixed-wing and rotary assets and men and women in evidence response teams, bond technicians, and interviews. And within 24 hours, we had that evidence from California to Boston, back in Washington, D.C., and the individual was charged. That is truly exemplary work by the interagency and our state and local partners and the men and women of the FBI. Thanks to the brilliant personnel at the FBI, this year has been truly historic in the reduction of crime. It has been a record-breaking year. We have seen in 2025 alone a historic 20-point decline in the nation's murder rate. We also saw 44,000 violent offenders arrested by this FBI last year alone. To put that in perspective, that's twice as many violent offenders arrested in all of 2024. The FBI seized more than 2,200 kilograms of fentanyl last year. That's a 31% increase from 2024. That's enough to kill 180 million Americans across this country. The FBI arrested 8 of our top 10 most wanted fugitives in just 14 months. To put that in perspective, that's double the number of the entirety of the prior administration. We've made over 3,000 arrests and seized over 1,000 firearms at the border, including 90 high-value targets from Mexico brought here for prosecution. And through our leadership in the Homeland Security Task Force and the interagency, a 6-week effort led by the HSTFs contributed to 400 operations, 32 federal agents working it, and 91 metric tons of drugs were seized. We've also seen unprecedented progress in protecting our most vulnerable, our children. In 2025, we located more than 6,300 missing kids. That's a 30% increase from 2024. And we arrested more than 2,000 child predators and human traffickers in 2025. That's a 17% increase from 2024. We also wiped out 4 million pedophile accounts off the dark web entirely. And we also focused in on the 764 network, those who especially target our youth and are vulnerable online. And we saw a 500% increase in the arrests of the NVE community. In terms of national security, we've been equally aggressive on that front as well, on the counterterrorism side, on the domestic and homegrown violent extremist side. And there's no overstating that our work, the men and women at the FBI, proudly stopped 4 terrorist attacks in the month of December last year alone in California, Pennsylvania, Texas, and New York. We also stood up the NSPM Joint Mission Center, integrating intelligence and operational expertise across our agencies to disrupt political violence and domestic terrorism. We finally empowered our capabilities at the FBI with an AI advancement that the FBI workforce has not seen. This FBI is up using AI 230% across our enterprise. The Bureau is fully engaged in defending against cyber attacks from nation-state adversaries, criminals, and everything in between. Last year, our Internet Crime Complaint Center fielded more than 1 million complaints that totaled nearly $21 billion in losses based on cyber theft. We've also seen an increase in complex financial crime arrests, included 400 indictments, and seized over $1.6 billion in funds related to those crimes, a 65% increase. Maybe most impactful in terms of scams, the FBI has led the overseas operations in Cambodia, Thailand, and Burma, crippling the scam center compound stood up by the CCP, including the arrest of an individual responsible for $14 billion in scams alone. And we're scuttling these compounds one by one. Just last week in Dubai, thanks to the cooperation of the FBI and the Dubai National Police and MPS, we arrested 300 individuals, freed 2,000 people who forced into traffic labor, and shut down a $4 billion scam center that was operating to fleece Americans and seniors of their hard-earned dollars. The FBI's unique authorities on these front lines show that we're defending the homeland. Just last month, we extradited Zhu Zhuwei, one of the top 2 cyber hackers from Italy. They say we couldn't get him. They thought the CCP was going to get him, but now he's here in prison. Our work collectively on the counterintelligence mission speaks for itself. 43% more counterintelligence arrests in 2025 than all of 2024 from China, DPRK, Russia, and elsewhere. And as you noted, Mr. Chairman, we are busy getting ready for protecting Americans from every event of the Olympics, the World Cup, the F1, the Super Bowl, as we drive into 2028. But this summer, all eyes are focused on the World Cup, and the FBI and DHS stand ready, learning from our valuable experiences and focusing on a 14-month lift to ensure everybody is taken care of when they visit our country for this World Cup event. Lastly, we have secured record-breaking achievements to include task force officers from around the country, including deputizing our own officers, reducing the task force officer pipeline from 14 months to 60 days, allowing men and women in law enforcement to work together at speeds that have never been delivered before. With your continued support, this FBI stands ready to continue this great work, and I stand ready to answer any and all questions from you. And categorically, Mr. Vice Chairman, when you say there's credible reporting, just because you say it's credible doesn't make it so. This FBI is doing a historic level of crime reduction across the country. I'm proud to lead it. And if you want to cite media reporting to discredit the men and women of the FBI, go right ahead. The target's right here. The mission has never been more successful.
Administrator Terrence Cole, Drug Enforcement Agency.
Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Van Hollen, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. It's an honor to be here during National Day is unlike anything we've seen before. The DEA's mission has never been more urgent. Fentanyl continues to kill Americans at alarming rates. It's not just another drug threat, it's a weapon of mass destruction. Measured in American lives lost every day, it's produced and distributed by transnational criminal organizations that have industrialized death for profit. The Sinaloa and Jalisco New Generation cartels, now designated foreign terrorist organizations, are driving this crisis. They operate as a global enterprise. They use sophisticated supply chains, financial networks, and technology to move poison into our communities. They are well-funded, highly adaptive, and relentless. We have to be just as relentless in our response, and DEA is leading the fight. We're taking the fight directly to these organizations with aggressive, intelligence-driven enforcement. Our focus is clear: target leadership, break their command and control, disrupt supply chains, hold accountable those who profit from the addiction and death, including the global networks that supply precursor chemicals to make fentanyl production possible. And we are delivering results. In one recent coordinated surge, DEA and our partners made more than 600 arrests. We seized hundreds of kilograms of fentanyl, multi-ton quantities of cocaine and meth, hundreds of firearms, and more than $11 million in U.S. currency. Across our fentanyl operations, we've made thousands of arrests tied to trafficking networks, seized millions of fentanyl pills, removed hundreds of kilograms of fentanyl powder from circulation. Those numbers translate directly into lives saved. We're also seeing an impact at our community level. In one city alone, targeted operations with our partners led to the reduction in violent crime of more than 1/3, and a significant amount of drugs and firearms taken off the streets. Drug trafficking drives violence. When we dismantle these networks, we're not just removing drugs, we're making communities safer. We're also focused on the financial side of this fight. We're going after the money, including the use of cryptocurrency and other tools that these organizations rely on to move and hide profits. Our reach is both global and local. DEA operates in 82 offices across 62 countries and maintains a presence of 26 field divisions with more than 200 offices here at home. This allows us to attack the problem from source to the street. We do this work with discipline and accountability. DEA's workforce is a driven agency. We have nearly 9,000 employees on board against an authorized level of nearly 9,700 employees. That includes just over 4,000 special agents on board compared to nearly 4,800 authorized. We prioritize putting people where they have the greatest impact, on the front lines. We're also careful stewards of the taxpayers' resources. More than 80% of our budget supports mandatory costs like salaries. Only a small portion is available for operational work. That means every operational dollar has to count, and it does. We prioritize keeping agents in the field, focus our resources on action that dismantles organizations and removes drugs from our community. We measure success by impact. Networks disrupted, communities protected, lives saved. The President's budget reflects confidence in that approach. It supports DEA's mission, our results, and our stewardship of resources entrusted to us. At the same time, the threat continues to evolve. These organizations move fast. They exploit global supply chains, digital platforms, and financial systems. To keep the pace, DEA has to strengthen its capacity in intelligence, data, and technology. This means giving our agents and analysts the tools to connect information, identify networks, and act quickly. It means improving how we share intelligence with federal, state, local, tribal, and international partners. And it means making sure our workforce has what it needs to do the job. This is about enabling investigators to get out from behind the desk and onto the streets, where they have the greatest impact. Our mission is simple: protect Americans and save American lives. We do this by enforcing the law, dismantling organizations driving this crisis, and working with our partners across the country and around the world. The men and women of DEA understand what is at stake. They see it every day. They carry out this mission with professionalism and purpose. With your continued support, we will stay on the offensive. We will keep pressure on the cartels. We will continue to disrupt networks driving the fentanyl crisis. And we will continue to protect Americans with the resources you entrust to us. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Administrator. Now, Director Seralta of the United States Marshals Service. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, subcommittee members. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the United States Marshals Service fiscal year 2027 President's budget request. The United States Marshals Service occupies a uniquely central position in the federal justice system. While protecting the judiciary, we're also the enforcement arm of the federal courts, involved in virtually every federal law enforcement initiative. Further, we are the federal government's primary agency for fugitive investigations and have the broadest arrest authority among federal law enforcement agencies. The U.S. Marshals Service has been at the apex of federal judicial protection, investigation, and enforcement with vast mission responsibilities such as witness protection and prisoner management as well. The United States Marshals Service is unique from all other agencies and has no control over the workload for our primary mission: protecting, defending, and enforcing the American justice system. For example, we cannot control the number of threats to our protectees and the subsequent required protection details. Prisoners that enter our custody cannot be controlled. How many federal witnesses we protect, or how many judicial proceedings are held each year. We're excited to work with you in advancing the United States Marshals Service forward in fiscal year 2027. This will require increases in personal equipment for critical safety needs. Our total budget request for nearly $5.2 billion includes, God bless you, $2.2 billion for salaries and expenses, $15 million for construction, and $3 billion for federal prisoner detention. Our workforce is one of the smallest in the federal law enforcement, at about 3,800 deputy U.S. Marshals. However, in fiscal year 2025, we arrested over 73,000 fugitives, conducted over 308,000 prisoner movements, housed over 55,000 prisoners, managed 37,000 assets worth $10.4 billion, provided security details for 18 protectees, in addition to securing the residences of the U.S. Supreme Court justices. Our continued success depends on our ability to provide the appropriate funding and personnel to support our missions. The fiscal year 2027 President's budget request maintains and advances funding for core activities. The U.S. Marshals Service requests program increases of $478 million for salaries and expenses appropriation to support the addition of 918 positions, of which 645 positions are for much needed Deputy United States Marshals. The budget request increases funding for judicial security and protective operations, establishes a protective equipment program, provides permanent resources for safe task forces, expands immigration enforcement, right-sizes fugitive task forces, and institutes a cyclical replacement of vehicles. One highlight of the U.S. Marshals Service budget request is one that is always at the forefront of my heart and this committee's concern, and that's the safety and security of our law enforcement officers. This morning, at the Marshals Service headquarters, we honored our fallen as part of our National Police Week ceremonies, recognizing officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty. We read the names of more than 300 of them. It is imperative that we provide the best equipment and training to aid in protecting our deputies while accomplishing our operational missions safely and successfully. I would like to discuss a matter of utmost importance: courthouse security and our construction appropriation. Unfortunately, the backlog of renovation projects to fix critical facility and security deficiency currently exceeds $484 million. Additional funding is necessary to maintain the infrastructure for the safety of the judicial officials, courtroom participants, the public, and our personnel. Lastly, the Marshals Service is required to house all detainees remanded to the custody of the Attorney General and must ensure sufficient resources are available for their housing and care. We have had some funding challenges in the last few years and appreciate the President's budget request of $3 billion. In closing, our continued success depends on our ability to provide the appropriate funding and personnel to support these vital functions. And so on behalf of the brave men and women of the United States Marshals Service, I thank you.
Thank you. And now Robert Sakata, the Director of the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and I appreciate your attendance. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Van Hollen, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the President's fiscal year 2027 budget request for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. I am truly honored to be here. ATF is the only federal law enforcement agency whose primary mission is combating violent crime. We arrest violent criminals, disrupt firearms trafficking networks that arm gangs and cartels, investigate bombings and arsons, and deliver world-class forensic and intelligence services to state and local partners, all while protecting the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans. We are a small federal agency with roughly 4,600 employees, but we are mighty. Our actions speak for themselves. Since January 20th, 2025, ATF has arrested over 8,700 criminals and seized nearly 44,000 firearms. Approximately 5,100 were interdicted before they were trafficked into Mexico. Just over 2.7 million rounds of ammunition and more than 28,300 illegal explosives were also interdicted and seized as evidence. ATF also investigated more than 3,500 arson and explosives incidents and deployed the National Response Team to 22 callouts, including the Palisades wildfire in California. We completed more than 11,000 FFL inspections and processed nearly 856,000 firearm trace requests for our state and local partners. We've also been very busy making operational improvements to our e-forms processing times. Between January 1, 2026 and April 14, 2026, ATF received more than 1 million e-form applications and finalized nearly 924,000 of those applications. Today, we are on track to hit a new record. By the end of May, we will have processed as many e-form 1 and 4 applications in 2026 as we did in the entirety of 2023. We have done all of this while cutting e-forms 1 processing times from 47 days to 42 days and cutting e-form 4 processing times from 230 days in 2023 to just 12 days today. The funds Congress has appropriated to date have allowed ATF to make a tangible difference in communities throughout the country every single day. ATF provides critical services to state and local law enforcement at no cost, including firearms tracing, ballistic intelligence, and forensic laboratory examinations involving firearms, arson, and explosives. These capabilities are central to identifying shooters, disrupting trafficking networks, and solving violent crime. ATF is grateful for this funding and has achieved a tremendous result, but without adequate investments by Congress, these results are not further sustainable. That is what makes the President's FY27 budget request for ATF so important. It totals $1.652 billion for salaries and expenses with 4,749 full-time equivalents. It is what ATF requires to sustain our mission. Notably, the administration's budget includes 2 program enhancements, $7.8 million for NIBIN and $25.8 million for combating gun violence. The NIBIN enhancement will enable ATF to replace aging ballistics imaging equipment and expand correlation services to additional sites. This would ensure timely investigative lead generation, allowing law enforcement to identify and apprehend violent offenders more effectively. The combating gun violence enhancement will enable ATF to add 86 positions, including 60 special agents, to support the expansion of firearms trafficking task forces along the southwest border and increase ATF's ability to identify, disrupt, and dismantle cross-border smuggling operations. If enacted, the administration's budget will enable ATF to sustain core capabilities, modernize critical infrastructure, and continue providing and expanding access to services for law enforcement partners, allowing us to continue focusing on our unique mission of combating violent crime. The Senate has been a staunch supporter of ATF's mission. I'm deeply grateful for that. I look forward to continuing to work together. I thank you all again. I look forward to your questions.
Director Sakata, thank you very much. We'll now begin with a round of questions, and I'll begin with you, Administrator Cole. I just returned from a visit to China, where in conversations with Chinese leaders, we again push the issue of precursor chemicals and their import to Mexico and ultimately the drugs to the United States. I've also been to Mexico and met with the leadership there to encourage them to discourage China from continuing to import those precursors. What's the DEA? What are you doing as the administrator to engage those foreign partners in China as well as other places, India, for example, to break down this supply chain?
Senator, thank you. And DEA is laser focused on targeting and disrupting the supply chain out of China as well as in India. We've held 2 bilaterals this year with Chinese officials, one at DEA headquarters and the other one at our Rocky Mountain Field Division. We continue to work on the ground in Beijing, China with NCB, the National Control Board in China, as well as MPS, the Ministry of Public Safety. We continue to stay engaged. We continue to target the Chinese organizations that are sending this precursor chemicals into Mexico for the manufacturing of fentanyl to come across our border. We will continue to stay on our front foot. We will continue to target. We will continue to work with U.S. Ambassador David Perdue on the ground in China, who's been a tremendous advocate on the ground, not only for all federal law enforcement, but for protecting American citizens in our country from this danger of the precursor chemicals that continue to flow into Mexico and into Colombia.
Administrator, how do you evaluate the interest, the willingness of the Chinese officials and other foreign countries, their leadership in actually assisting in keeping the precursors out?
And at the ground level, we're working extremely well. I think there are still barriers that are in place. I know the president's visit this week will be fruitful as we continue to stay on the offense when it comes to protecting Americans to this precursor chemicals that continue to flow into Mexico and China. The Mexican authorities have stepped up their game with bilateral cooperation. I think everybody at this table has seen an increase in the cooperation with Mexico, but we need more. We can only determine the effect when we start to see the decrease in Americans that are dying at the hands of this poison that is coming out of Mexico, but is being fueled by China and India.
Thank you for your efforts, and I look forward to results. Director Serralta, you are the second U.S. Marshal I ever met in a visit to Florida when you were in the District of Florida, and I appreciate the hospitality you extended to me, 3 years ago or so, as I tried to learn about the Marshals Service in this capacity I hold on this committee. You mentioned infrastructure at courthouses. I've taken an interest over the years in the Commerce, Justice, Science Subcommittee working to provide additional resources for judiciary security. And that has included security operations, courthouse security, protective details, and threat response capabilities. We've also worked to provide legislation so that information can be removed from websites regarding members of the judiciary and their families. You mentioned another aspect of this in your testimony, and that's about infrastructure. I leaned back to my staff to ask if this subcommittee has jurisdiction over infrastructure at courthouses, which I didn't necessarily think we did, but we do because it comes out of your budget. So I wanted to give you the chance to highlight, for me at least, what's the current circumstances that our judges and court officials face in regard to threats, and if you want to re-highlight for us the things that we might do to be helpful to make their persons more secure.
Thank you, Senator Moran. It was a pleasure to have you in Florida. I hope to do that again sometime.
You did that never knowing that you were going to be the director of the U.S. Marshals Service.
I did not know that.
Assume.
Correct. So our judicial security protective operations is due to with the president's budget to have an increase of $34.6 million. And that's going to strengthen and expand the protective operations mission by adding more dedicated teams and allow the USMS to surge resources when threats necessitate enhanced judicial security. But you bring about the question about the construction backlog, which I mentioned in my opening. The construction backlog is $484 million, and that includes $30 million of it for prisoner elevators. So anytime we have to take a prisoner through a different elevator or up the steps, we risk the prisoner injuring himself or someone being injured by having the prisoner walking in unsecure locations. So it is a serious concern. It is something that I believe goes to the judicial security as a whole. The Marshal Service mitigates and we triage what areas we work with first with the input of the judiciary.
You would take just one more minute before I turn to Senator Van Hollen. What threats, what's the significance of the threats members of the judiciary and their court officers face today? Is it changing?
So for the last several years, there's been an increase in threats. Any threat that is a viable threat to a judge to us is serious business. It's something that we will investigate and arrest individuals and seek prosecution on. So there has been an increase in threats. It's been over the past several years, and it's fueled primarily by social media, where folks can be brave on the internet, yet when we go meet up with them, they're not so brave.
Thank you. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you. Director Cicada, you hold a position of public trust. Do you agree that you should lead by example and be held to at least the same standard of conduct as you expect of ATF agents?
Yes, sir.
And would you agree that if one of your agents was unable to perform his or her duties because of excessive drinking, you would need to take corrective action or disciplinary measures?
Yes, sir.
Director Seralta, same question for you with respect to the U.S. Marshals Service. Do you agree with the responses from Director Cicada?
Ranking Member Van Hollen, that would be correct. I would do that after a thorough investigation by our internal affairs.
Administrator Cole, same question to you with respect to the DEA.
Yes, sir. I would echo what Rob and Gaddy have said. After a thorough review by our OPR, Office of Professional Responsibility, yes, sir.
Director Patel, do you agree with these three gentlemen as the
Yes,
head
sir.
of the FBI? So you agree, Director Patel, that if one of your agents was unable to perform his or her duties because of excessive drinking, you would need to take corrective or disciplinary action. You agree with that statement?
We would implement the inspection review process, just like these other agencies have their own internal investigations, and complete that review.
As I said in my opening remarks, I really don't care about your personal life so long as you are able to perform your public and official responsibilities, which are awesome responsibilities. Multiple reports, including reporting by The Atlantic, have alleged episodes of excessive drinking, unexplained absences, and behavior that concern current and former FBI and DOJ officials. You have publicly denied those allegations and filed a defamation lawsuit. So today, as you testify before Congress, is it your testimony that those allegations are categorically false?
Unequivocally, categorically false.
So there have been no occasions during your tenure when FBI personnel were unable to promptly reach you?
Absolutely not. You can ask my entire workforce. They hear from me at every single hour of the day, as do these great gentlemen here, as do the men and women of the interagency and state and local law enforcement and the White House.
And so there have been no occasions when your security detail had difficulty waking or locating you, is that right?
Nope, it's a total farce. I don't even know where you get this stuff, but it doesn't make it credible because you say so.
I'm not saying it, Director Patel. It's been written and documented.
You are literally saying it.
No, I'm saying that these are reports, Director Patel.
No,
and
unlike
I
your
will
baseless
say,
reports,
Director
the only person
Patel,
that was slinging margaritas in El Salvador on the taxpayer dollar with a convicted gangbanging rapist was you.
You know,
the only person that ran up a $7,000 bar tab in Washington, D.C. at the lobby bar was you. So the only individual in this room that has been drinking on taxpayer dime during the day is you.
Director Patel, come on. These are serious allegations that were made against you. They're in a lawsuit that you filed.
You drinking margaritas with a gangbanger is true and on video.
It just goes to show you
running a $7,000 bar tab at the lobby bar has been filed by your own office.
This goes to show
drink during the day. That's you. This is the ultimate example of hypocrisy.
Mr. Chairman,
I will not be tarnished by baseless allegations and fraudulent statements from the media.
The fact that you mentioned that indicates you don't know what you are talking about. Now, here, Director
The only thing I know is you're the one drinking margaritas with felons.
Actually, that's a false statement, and I'm asking you about your statements.
I've answered that.
And I'm asking you about a particular report. And
it's not a report.
Your testimony is, so let me ask you this. Are you willing to take the test, it's called the audit test, that members of our active duty military and others take to determine whether they have a drinking problem?
I'll take any test you're willing to take.
I will take it, Director Patel. I'll take it. You ready to take it?
Let's go.
Yes or no?
Let's go. Side by side.
I'll take it. All right. I think that the fact that you're so, have you ordered polygraph tests of members of your team to determine how that story came about?
The FBI conducts polygraph tests all the time.
No, have you ordered polygraph tests for members of your team to determine who was the source of the stories that I'm asking you about?
I don't order any polygraph tests. There's an internal inspection review process for any and all leaks, especially of baseless information at the FBI, that's been in place for the last 30 years. Those processes are followed by career intelligence and agents on the ground.
So I'll take that as a yes, since you said that these were unauthorized disclosures. I have another round of questioning regarding your firing people who were important to gathering intelligence with respect to Iran, but I'll wait for my second round. Thank you, Chairman.
Senator Collins, we're pleased to have the chairwoman of the full committee with us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, the proliferation of illegal marijuana grow houses connected to transnational criminal organizations originating in China is an ongoing problem in the state of Maine. A DHS memo in 2023 estimated that Maine had as many as 270 Chinese-backed illegal marijuana operations, producing up to an estimated $4.3 billion in illicit revenues. Since then, thousands of pounds of illegal marijuana have been seized, primarily because of the tireless work of our Maine sheriffs and local law enforcement in Maine. One other side effect of these illegal grow operations is they usually destroy the houses in which they're located, which exacerbates the housing shortage in my state. Last year, you testified that the FBI would be sending more resources to the field, specifically to Maine, to combat these dangerous operations. I speak with Maine sheriffs frequently about this problem, and they have reported some improvement in federal interest and participation. For example, federal support has been critical to track money laundering, which is often linked to these operations, and in providing interpreter services to question individuals who are arrested, who often appear to have been trafficked and forced to work and live at these sites under hazardous conditions and don't speak English. Bring me up to date on how the FBI is working to address these dangerous grow houses that are operating not just in Maine, although we're a particular target, but Oklahoma, California, and other states as well. It's essential that we have support from FBI, from DEA, from Treasury. This has to be an all-of-government effort to close these operations down.
Senator, I couldn't agree with you more. And what we did since you and I we've spoken in between you last year in this hearing, but the HSTFs that we stood up, the Homeland Security Task Forces that we stood up in 59 locations across the country, co-led by DHS and FBI, have specifically targeted the marijuana grow house operations, especially tied to the Chinese. There's two problems there. The Chinese nationals that are doing most of the criminal activity related to the grow houses have either severed ties or covered their tracks very well, and has led us to be unable to determine their direct connectivity. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, back to mainland China. That's kind of their MO on how they do, whether it's grow houses or any other criminal activity. So what we're doing with the HSTFs is reverse engineering those programs, taking down the grow houses, whether they're in Maine or Oklahoma, and tracing their banking records and their financial statements to see what we can do with the sanctions program overseas and shut down the financiers of these operations.
Do we know where the money is going to? Some law enforcement officers in Maine believe it's tied to the fentanyl trade.
Yes, ma'am. I believe, as these gentlemen will tell you, the money always goes back into the drug trafficking trade, into the drug traffickers' pockets. And so we're not seeing, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, what we're not seeing yet is the money directly being shipped back over to mainland China and the CCP from these grow house operations.
I would encourage you to even increase your efforts even more, because this remains a huge problem in Maine, despite the valiant efforts of our sheriffs and local law enforcement. Administrator Cole, could you provide an update on DEA's efforts in this area?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Senator. And we continue to target those specific marijuana traffickers in Maine. As of recently, we had executed 44 search warrants in reference to Chinese underground marijuana houses, seized about 32,000 marijuana plants, over 500 pounds of marijuana. And as we continue to trace the Chinese underground banking system, where the funds are being fueled, as the Director Patel had said, they're often using crypto as the instantaneous transfer of wealth. And what that requires our skilled investigators to do is to pull those findings off the blockchain, but to specifically look at 1, 2, and 3 tiers removed to help identify exactly where those illicit gains are going to. We continue to stay on the offensive. Recently, with our Bangor, Maine office, we've identified up to 250 potential locations where this is occurring. So this is ongoing cooperation with our state, local, tribal partners and our federal partners, not only through our efforts, but the efforts of the Homeland Security Task Force that has come together. We will stay on the front foot. We will continue to target and investigate and bring them to justice. Unfortunately, they are embedded, which requires long-term, complex conspiracy work to continue to eradicate not only the poison of the narcotics, but the environmental dangers that they bring to these grow houses. So we will continue. We will keep you posted, Senator. My team is happy to follow up with your team to give you progress and update reports.
Thank you. What I have found is a lot of time, constituents who live near these houses know what's going on. I mean, all of a sudden, the windows are covered. They see people going in and out at odd hours. They can smell, in some cases, the marijuana. These are not the licensed operations that are legal in Maine. These individuals are not following any of the rules, and they are operating illegally and causing tremendous harm. The fact that your latest reporting shows that there's still 250 houses, and that's probably an underestimate, it shows how incredibly serious this problem is. And again, think of the affordable housing crisis in Maine, in Oklahoma, and other states. These are houses that become uninhabitable because of the amount of black mold that is usually inside of them. So I hope you will continue the task force effort, because this really requires an all-of-government approach. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Collins. Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to each of our witnesses for being here today. Director Cole, I'd like to begin with you. And I'm very pleased that the New England Drug Lab, which is located in Londonderry, New Hampshire, has now opened, not officially, but soon. And it's soon going to start processing samples. But I am concerned about the staff capacity for that lab. And I understand it's going to take about 50 full-time personnel once it's fully staffed. And it's the 8th regional DEA lab. So can you tell me how many positions the DEA needs to fully staff all of its labs, and whether you have requested money in the budget to do that?
Senator, thank you for your support of the DEA lab and the funding to go along with it. We are happy to report on time and within budget.
Right.
Two things you often don't hear in government, but on time and within budget. We are looking forward to being the subject matter experts in building that capacity there. Chemists, fully on board. We are ready to go. We are currently hiring the fingerprint specialists that are going to be required, but we're committed to have that lab fully staffed to service the men and women of local, state, and tribal law enforcement as they continue to identify new synthetic strands of opioids that continue to arrive in the United States from Mexico that are being fueled by China. It's important to realize that as we continue to identify these strands and push out these PSAs, we have a recent PSA, public service announcement, that went out last week regarding 3 more strands of synthetic opioids. This
Yes,
lab is...
we're seeing that in New Hampshire, and we're very concerned about it. But so you're comfortable that the money that you've requested in the budget would fully staff not just our lab in New England, but all of the other 7 labs?
Yeah, so the great thing about DEA with the chemists, they are the highly fully staffed core series at DEA at almost 97%. We have a class in session right now of 17 more chemists coming on board. So I'm very confident that we are going to be staffing levels at 98, 99%
Right.
within the next few months. Yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you. That's very good news for us, and the New Hampshire delegation is interested in being helpful in any way we can. Director Seralto, I know that you said that at the Marshals Service you can't really control much of the work that you have to do, that you have to handle whatever comes your way, but you can control what you request in your budget. And I noticed that your budget request increased funding of more than $152 million for immigration-related activities, but only, I think you said, $34 million to increase judicial security. And I am concerned that given the increase in criminal activity against our federal judges, that, as you point out, the threats to them are problematic. So can you talk about why the dramatic increase in immigration funding, but only, about a quarter of that to handle judicial security when that's a major aspect of the work that you all do?
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. I appreciate that question. So our immigration ask for $152 million expands the USMS's participation in the Homeland Security task forces, whose mission is to disrupt transnational criminal organizations. It also provides funding to support the USMS's increased workload in our traditional missions. So the efforts of our immigration work as a nation are going to add to the cost of the Marshal Service's processes.
I understand, but we've just passed billions of dollars for immigration activities and no additional funding in the Republican-passed reconciliation bills to address judicial security. And given, as you point out, the threats to judges across this country, don't you think it might be better to rely on the billions that are in those bills to address immigration and refocus those dollars for the Marshals Service on judicial security and courthouse security?
Well, Senator, I can tell you the Marshals Service could use the money for the security situations with our backlog in construction. That is a big number. That's $484 million.
Right, I understand that. So who made the determination that you were going to increase immigration funding by such a large amount?
Well, in staffing the HSTFs, the president has given us money to be able to staff those HSTFs. So it is so that we don't take away from judicial security. That's why the number's higher. Our judicial security protective operations has gotten a $34 million, or the budget proposed a $34 million addition.
No, I understand, but the $152 million I understood was also an addition. My time is up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Graham.
Thank you. Mr. Cole, what would you say to anybody who wanted to abolish the DEA?
Well, I would have them take a look at our direct workflow currently, where last year we seized close to 57 million fentanyl pills in the United States, close to $900 million in U.S. currency that came from drug traffickers. The the foreign footprint that we currently have, you would have cartel members celebrating all over the world, designated terrorists celebrating all over the world that the DEA was gone.
That's a good answer. So terrorists and drug cartels would be celebrating. So I just want to say to the men and women of the DEA, thank you. I think you make our lives eminently safer. You're doing things that most of us wouldn't want to do in the shadows. So I just wanted to get on the record my view that you perform a very important function. Director Patel, when you look at the threat streams against our country, are they going up or down?
The threat streams over the last year in general have gone up over the last few years, which is why you've seen the resulting amount of violent criminal arrests. If we're arresting 44,000 people, which is twice as many as the year before, that's because there's a lot of violent criminals running around America. But the good news is that the FBI, along with these men and their agencies, are doing the work and arresting people at record levels: gangbangers, narcotics traffickers, sex traffickers, terrorists, and those that pose the greatest threat to our national security.
During the Biden years, they say 11 to 15 million illegal immigrants came into the country. Are you familiar with that reporting?
Yes, sir.
So what are we supposed to do? Just ignore it?
Well,
you don't want to ignore it, do you?
not at the FBI, no, sir.
Good. I mean, if you had 11 to 15 million people coming in illegally, you'd want to push back. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. We have pushed back. Actually, we've reduced violent crime in every one of our 50 states by an average of 10 points.
Yeah, so you got to plus up the resources to deal with what happened, what I would consider a virtual invasion of our country by illegal immigrants. And to all of you on the front lines, thank you. I mean, the idea that we wouldn't want to do that astounds me. I mean, we got to get, control over our country again. Director Patel, when it comes to systems, do you think the country would be well served to have a law like I'm proposing called Logan's Law that would require states to report to the Attorney General of the United States the results of all cases involving violent crime where you could get 6 months or more, to include the charge and the plea bargain so we'd know better about soft on crime prosecutors and judges?
That bill is critical to providing the information that we at the FBI house at our Criminal Justice Information Center, CJIS property in West Virginia. We are only as good as the data we're given. We don't go out and proactively and legally obtain that data from our partner enforcement agencies across the country.
So you would support Logan's Law
Absolutely.
requiring that to be done?
We need it.
Yeah, I think so too. And the man who in Cambridge, Massachusetts, who shot at a bunch of drivers, he had a long criminal record. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
As a matter of fact, while he was on probation, he shot at police officers and not much happened to you. You're familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
Do you agree we need to break the cycle of catch and release and looking the other way when it comes to violent crime in this country?
I think catch and release is the #1 cause of recidivist violent crime in the history of the United States of America.
Okay. When it comes to the FBI, how's morale?
I'm sorry?
How's your morale at the FBI?
Morale has never been better. When I go across the country and I talk to the line agents and the intelligence analysts and professional staff, I travel around the country, I talk to our state and local partners, they tell me one thing resoundingly: we're finally going to do the work that we were asked to do with the resources that we needed to get the job done. And that's what this administration is focused on. And that's why you're seeing the results that we talked about.
Mr. Cole, do you think we're seeing dividends from your focus on illegal drugs and cartels and all the above?
Absolutely, Senator. And we will stay on the offensive, whether it's taking Nicolas Maduro out of Venezuela or capturing the next Chapo or helping coordinate the next Mencho operation. We will continue to target those foreign terrorists that are killing Americans.
Do you agree that the Maduro operation not only was flawless, it sent a new message that a new sheriff's in town and created deterrence we haven't had before?
I think it sent one great message to everybody in the Western Hemisphere and the dictators and foreign terrorists around the world that they will be held accountable for sending this poison to the U.S.
Thank you all very much.
Senator Coons.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chair Moran, Ranking Member Van Hollen, Senator Murkowski, and I appreciate each of our witnesses for being here today. During National Police Week, I just wanted to express my particular appreciation for the men and women of each of your agencies. When I was county executive, I was responsible for the second largest law enforcement agency in our state, and our partnerships with Marshals, ATF, DEA, FBI, and many other elements of federal law enforcement were really critical